Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the DC Capstone Report. It's great to be back with you this week for another podcast on Alabama football. Well, it's coming off of a bye week this week, so the podcast is structured just a little different, but I just want to say we came off a great victory against Tennessee here in Bryant-Denny Stadium and had a bye week which was much needed. So today on the podcast, we're going to focus on the upcoming game against the LSU Tigers. In our first segment, we're going to take a look at the bye week preparation. What did Alabama hope to accomplish and get done during the bye week? Number two, in the second segment, we're going to look at the players to watch in the upcoming game against LSU. And finally, in the third and final segment, we'll preview the game against the LSU Tigers. You're listening to the DC Capstone Report. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on the Martin Houston Show at Tide 100.9. You can listen live at Tide100.9.com. Well, it's great to be back on another podcast for Alabama football. Glad to have you listening in. Lance and I really appreciate all the loyal listeners that listen to our podcast each and every week. We appreciate you following us on our Facebook page. And catching us on our website at dccapstonereport.com. We also want to tell you can check out Lance's other sites at rolltidebama.com and freelancepictures.com for some great Alabama videos and content. Well, today in the first segment, we're going to take a look at the bye week preparation. Alabama goes to a bye week right before the LSU game. Came off a great game against Tennessee. Sandwiched between the Tennessee game and the LSU game is a bye week and what we hope to accomplish. Well, the first thing is the big thing, and that it comes off of any bye week. When you have players who have some downtime, you wonder what's going to take place, what's going to happen to those players. Alabama has a very structured environment here to keep players in check and to make sure they're on point and on task. And sometimes when you give them a little more off time or downtime, they can get in and make some poor decisions, and we've seen it over the years, some poor choices and poor decisions been made over bye weeks. But this bye week was uneventful. No issues, no problems. As a matter of fact, it seems like the players were all business to the task at hand and used the bye week for what it was intended to do. So what did they accomplish during the bye week? Well, number one, I think we saw some recoveries from injuries. Over this 8-9 weeks of season that's been going on, it's been very difficult to play back-to-back games and getting ready for games and recover also from the injuries that we see. Now, the injuries that we know about, everybody's wondering, is Drew Sanders going to come back? It's a possibility that he's used the additional time to get well and come back and play in this LSU game. But those are just the injuries that we know about, the ones that's talked about. We hear the press conference, that thing, but there are injuries all along the team that we don't know about that the players are trying to recover from. Those are injuries that they can play with, but they cause them problems. So in this bye week, you want to make sure that you use and take advantage of the time to recover from these nicks and pulls and strains and injuries. And I think that what I'm hearing out of the camp, out of this bye week practice and into this week, is that the team really took advantage of this recovery. The second thing is that you want to rest and get rejuvenated and revived and recover your body. You may not have been injured, but it takes a toll on you, and your body is tired. So you want to make sure that Coach Saban has said from time after time that the recovery process, making sure that the players really take advantage of the recovery process is important. And from what I'm hearing out of the practices this week, the players look crisp, they look revived, look rested. And not only physically, but mentally, because playing this game under the stress of the season really takes a toll on you mentally as well. One of the things that Alabama's worked on is communication. So I think getting fresh mentally will help in that getting better communication. So very pleased with what's coming out of the bye week, what we're hearing about that. And then finally, in a bye week, what you want to do is you want to take the time to, of course, prepare for your opponents, but also to get back to the fundamentals and work on things that you've seen and uncovered in film. Believe me, during these first 8 games, looking at all the films, there's some things that's been uncovered. And you want to see what were my tendencies. What are my tendencies on offense? What are my tendencies on defense? It will cause teams that we play in the future to take an advantage by looking at this film. And you want to try to make sure what were my errors, what were my mistakes that we made. So a lot of things go into the bye week, and one of the things that I don't think people realize is so important is the number of analysts that Alabama have that pour over film and look at mistakes and errors, showing the players how to correct the fundamentals. And that's fundamentals on offensive line play, on foot placement, on hand placement, fundamentals of quarterback play, receivers, the defensive backs, all the different things, that the mistakes that we made, they critique all those, and then you work on the fundamentals of how to correct those. And also you work on fundamentals of correct mistakes like penalties. And one thing that we've had a problem with is penalties, pre-snap penalties, and the things that just kind of stop drives. So I think that's what I'm hearing. It took a lot of time to work on some fundamentals. And then you look at your upcoming opponent against LSU, and if you have more time, you may prepare for another team. But I think that what this team is really focused in on is this game against LSU. And everything that I'm hearing is that they use the bye week properly to recover from injuries, to get rest and recover physically and mentally from the stress of the season, and also to work on the fundamentals. So it would appear to me that it came at just the right time. The team was getting in that place where they can get the refocus mentally. You want to refocus on the rest of the season, because right now, folks, the rest of the season is right before Alabama, right where they want to be. Yes, we had a loss against Texas A&M, but the new college football playoff rankings came out last night, and those rankings put Alabama as the number 2 team in the nation. So the goals that Alabama had before the season are still in front of them. That loss is not taking it away, but we can't afford another loss, can't afford another mental lapse, can't afford another lapse in our communication that would keep us from winning a game. So it's important to take this bye week to focus on the road ahead, take it one game at a time, and if Alabama wins the rest of the games before them, they will end up being the national champions, repeat again this year. All they got to do is take care of business one game at a time. And I think that's what they focused on during this bye week. One little tidbit, during the bye week, Coach Saban on October 31st turned 70 years old, and the team had a great little reception for him at the end of one of the practices. So it's good to see them getting into the spirit of that as well. So it appears that they're focused in and ready to continue this season on, and it starts Saturday nights against the LSU Tigers. Well, here in the second segment on the podcast today, we want to focus on the players to watch in the upcoming game against LSU. Well, this will be back-to-back games in the Bryant-Denny Stadium at night. It's a night game. Going to be a fun time. If you've ever been to an LSU game, it's a fun experience. I recommend you go and take part of it. At night, it's a really fun experience to see us play in Bryant-Denny Stadium under the light. So, players to watch during this game. Well, let's start on offense. I think it all is going to flow on offense from the quarterback. So the number 1 player to watch in this game is Bryce Young. So what has he done over the bye week? What did he take advantage of over the bye week that's going to make him a better player down the stretch? Well, in listening to what he had to say to the media this week, it's clearly that he took advantage of one of those things in the bye week, and that is to work on his fundamentals. And that fundamental that he concentrated on was communication. When asked this week what was the biggest factor he thought in the success or failure of the offensive team at Alabama, and he said he had not realized it before, but since playing in these games, he realized that communication, being on one page and gelling as a team, as an offense, is a big part. And so I think that he has really done a good job of taking that time off to do that. And when I say communication, he has to communicate with his receivers, with his backs, and with his offensive line in order to make this a cohesive unit to be able to go out and accomplish the things that we need to accomplish. And I know that we focus sometimes for the lack of communication on defense that's really showed up in some busted plays, but the lack of communication on offense has also showed up. We just didn't see it as often, because what it did was it stopped us on pre-snap penalties. It stopped us on trying to keep the third down, making plays on third down. It stopped us in lack of concentration and dropping balls, and a lack of getting us in the right offensive line protection scheme for the play that we got called. So I think working on that, Bryce Young is going to come out in this game, and you need to watch how more crisp we are on offense. If he's done and the team has done what I think they've done during the offense, Bryce Young will be able to lead us in watching him in this game. I look for him to have a big game on a national stage against LSU. As a matter of fact, I look for him in this game to maybe have that Heisman moment where it catapults him, as he's already a Heisman leader, it catapults him further into the conversation for the Heisman Trophy. So Bryce Young is one of my players to watch on offense. Another player to watch on offense to me is Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson has really waited his turn to play at the University of Alabama. He has come up through the ranks, sit on the sideline, played his playment, and now he's making his bid to be the starting tailback at Alabama. He's done a really good job. But I think he is also a passionate leader for this Alabama football team. And I think one thing that he has said in past, that this LSU game means a whole lot to the players at Alabama. And I think his leadership this week has really been key in preparation for this game. Now, LSU is kind of coming off on a down year, and we'll talk about that more in the third segment. But Brian Robinson has my understanding this week, has been key in keeping this team focused on being prepared for LSU. He remembers what LSU did when they came in here in 2019 and danced on our logo after beating us and talked all the smack talk to the fans and to the players. And he hadn't forgot that. Going down there and beating them on their field was good last year, but he's been waiting for an opportunity to play his best game to beat them here in Bryant-Denny Stadium, where he feels like they were disrespected 2 years ago. So look for Brian Robinson to have a great game. He is, in what I've heard in practice, he's been a vocal leader. He's been a person that's kept people in line, kept them focused, realizing that this is the next game on the schedule, and it just happens to be LSU, and to worry about Alabama and take care of business in a way that no one will have a doubt at the end which is the better team. And I think Brian Robinson, watch for him in this game to really have a good game running the ball. Well, on defense, I think you got two players to watch. It all starts with what I consider to be the best defensive player in the Southeastern Conference, and that is Will Anderson Jr. Watch for Will Anderson Jr. He leads the nation in tackles for loss. He is high in sacks. I look for him to have a huge game in this game, sacking the quarterback. He puts so much pressure in studying the film and watching some of LSU's tackles. I really feel like Will Anderson Jr. is going to have a great opportunity to rush the quarterback in this game. So watch for him to affect the quarterback. I'd like for him to really put pressure on the quarterback, but I like him to have like 3 sacks in this game, possibly 4, which would be just phenomenal for him to increase his sack count. One thing I think is going to help him in this game is having Drew Sanders back. If he's able to come back and play in this game, having him on the other side will put a lot more pressure on the offensive line to be able to keep both of them out. So I look for Will Anderson to have a huge game. The other defensive player I think is key in this game is Phidarian Mathis. He has come of age this year, and he doesn't get enough credit for what he does. But one of the things that LSU does well is run the ball. They had a running back who got over 300 yards. But one of the things that Alabama does well is stop the run. And so I think Phidarian Mathis is going to be a key in the run stopper. He and all the other defensive linemen, but I think it all flows through him. I think he'll set the tone. I think he sets the tone and the passion to play. So I look for him to have a big game. So the players to watch in this game, if you're watching the game, look for Bryce Young and Brian Robinson on offense, and Will Anderson Jr. and Phidarian Mathis on defense. Well, come to the third and final segment this week on the podcast. Thank you again for listening. Lance and I really appreciate your listening to us each and every week. Here on the third and final segment, we're going to preview the game against LSU. Well, some folks are talking about this LSU game, this rivalry lacks luster this year because of what's happening with LSU. We all know LSU has a lame duck coaching staff coming in. Players have kind of been disheartened and not played well. So what do you expect? Well, we can get one or two things, and I think it doesn't matter what LSU does. Alabama just has to do their thing in order to win this game. But we can get one or two teams from LSU. We can get a team that comes in so passionate and ready to make a statement when everyone's doubting them and talking about them and talking about their coaching staff. Or we can get a team that comes in and lay down and not play well. Either way, LSU is going to come in and play the way they play. Alabama only has to worry about what they do. And I believe if they attack the areas that I'm going to talk about in this podcast, then I believe that Alabama wins the game no matter what. But if they come in and look to make a statement by winning this game and try to beat Alabama and derail their season, and try to make Ed Orgeron season. Hey, they have nothing to lose. They can play willy nilly. They can go for it on fourth down. What's going to happen to them if they take all these chances and don't pan out? Are they going to fire him? No, they've already fired him. So he's a lame duck coach. He can do what he wants to do. So that's one possible scenario. The other possible scenario is, they've talked about this week not having enough players to practice. Players are opting out. Players are hurt. Players are kind of laying down, not playing well. They're not really enthused about coming here. The fans, for the first time in a long time, sent tickets back to the University of Alabama and LSU, which is unheard of. So, maybe they come in and they just lay down and Alabama runs all over them. Guess what? That's what they want us to be thinking about, but that's not what this team is thinking about. This team is honed in on realizing that all they have to do is play the best football Alabama can play in this game and not worry about what LSU does. Take advantage of everything that LSU gives you in this game. So the first thing I think that we're going to have to do in this game is to run the ball with Brian Robinson to set up the play-action passes that Bryce Young will do. And I really believe that we've got a chance to really come out and focus on running the ball in this game. Brian Robinson is poised to have a big game here. Offensive lines had a week to work on the communication and protection and blocking schemes. And they've had an opportunity to recover and rest. So I believe we come out crisp on offense, running the ball heavily at first to set up the play-action passing. And then I think that opens up a whole greater passing game later as we get into the later part of the first half and the first part of the second half. So I really look for Alabama to have a big game on offense. On offense, we also have to make no mistakes. We got to limit the penalties. We got to see that it's worked on the off week. We worked on that, limiting the penalties, and we've increased our communication to a better level. And then we don't make any mistakes. We can't have any turnovers. We can't do anything in this game to give LSU an opportunity to get any momentum. We got to seize the momentum on offense, run the ball, set up the pass, and we got to be able to limit our mistakes and penalties. Well, how we win this game on defense? Well, again, I think it's going to start with the run. We've got to stop the run. The LSU is going to try to run the ball. Like I said earlier, they got a running back who has a 300-yard game, so they're going to just kind of feed them the ball. Well, Alabama is going to have to stop that run in order to put them in passing situations where they're not as good in passing situations. Now, whatever people tell you about LSU being down, they still have great talent. They have great five-star talent. And if you got great five-star talent, you can make big plays. So Alabama has to stop the run, and they can't be busting coverage in the pass when they go to pass the ball. We got to have good coverage in the pass. No mistakes on defense. Communication has to be there. And we've got to put them in passing situations, and then we got to be able to cover those passing situations. I think the way we do that is we put pressure on the quarterback. If Drew Sanders comes back, I look for a lot of pressure all night on the quarterback. Will Anderson Jr. having a big night and making a lot of sacks. Fendarian Mathis having a big night up the middle. You may see people like Tim Smith, LeBron Ray getting in the backfield on the middle push. Because LSU will be trying to help out their tackles, block Will Anderson on the outside. You may see a push up the middle from the middle linebackers on blitzes, such as Christian Harris or Henry Toto. So we got opportunities in this game to really affect this game on defense and flip it in Alabama's favor. And the way we do that is by pressuring the quarterback, put him in positions to make plays where they make mistakes. And I think the more pressure we put on the quarterback, the more mistakes that he's going to make. And I look for us to have a lot of interceptions this game, possibly fumbles, in order to play a mistake-free game. I think we come out of here in good shape. So Alabama, I think, under the lights on Saturday night in Bryant-Denny Stadium, LSU comes in. I think we take them to task. We start early and we put on the pressure and we beat them handily. I think Alabama wins this game. Alabama 48, LSU 17. Well, that's the podcast for this week. Thank everyone for tuning in and listening to us again. Don't forget to go check out Lance's other sites, RollTideBama.com, FreelancePictures.com. Check us out on Facebook at DC Capstone Report page and also DCCapstoneReport.com. You can always follow me on Twitter at DavidCott50. Well, thanks. Have a great week and Roll Tide.